Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Pastor in Training Podcast, the show where we have honest conversations about faith, theology, and what it means to follow Jesus in the real world. I'm your host, Jeffery White, and today I have the privilege of sitting down with Kim Schoelen. We're talking about a subject that every church should be thinking about but doesn't always discuss openly: disability, accessibility, belonging, and what it means to truly be the body of Christ. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, it's so good to be here. I'm really excited to be joining you today and chatting up some faith and justice and grace and truth. Let's go.
Right on. Before we jump into today's topic, I'd love for everyone listening to get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what first sparked your passion for disability advocacy within the church?
Sure. So I am I'm a pastor at a wonderful church in North Fork, California. So if you are going to Yosemite, you make a right-hand turn and go about 20 minutes and then you're there. And I'm also a mom, and I do a lot of hiking and stuff like that. So that's who I am. But what got me into disability justice was, I want to say, having that moment, that aha moment of, oh, I have a disability. Because I think a lot of times when we're diagnosed with different things, especially neurodivergent, any of the neurodivergencies, it's not told to us that this is a disability, and which would have been super helpful when I'd had that diagnosis. For me to give myself a little bit more grace with what I was experiencing. And so when I realized, oh, ADHD is a disability, which it shouldn't have taken me that long to realize that I had been filing for accommodations with the student disabilities office, at my seminary and everything. It should have clicked a lot sooner that oh, yes, I do have a disability. I can say and be proud of the fact that I have a disability. I can use that language to help me understand why I experience the world the way that I do. And so that's what really kind of got me started in disability justice work, was the first of all, the power of a correct diagnosis, and then second of all, learning that I'm actually able to say for myself that my disability has profoundly affected the way that I've navigated the world. And all of that happened while I was in seminary. So it all just kind of it started to grow on top of one thing on top of another. And I joined the United Church of Christ Disabilities Ministries Board about 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the work that we do is incredible. I mean, really what we're doing is we are working on inclusivity at a level that a lot of churches have not figured out how to catch up to yet. So it's become a passion because it's something that's deeply part of who I am. And I would say that ever since, when you're on the right path, all of the signs start to show that you're on the right path, and all of the significant relationships in my life, all of the people that I've met, all of the work that I've started doing after I started working in this area just really started to fit into place. And now I'm working on a doctor of ministry on the intersection of disability and death and how we can do pastoral care in those spaces.
Fascinating. That's awesome. So have you worked with Sarah Lund then?
Oh, yeah. Yep. She is the liaison to our board.
Yeah. I did her Blessed Minds. I read that in
Yes.
Progressive Youth Ministry last year.
Yeah.
And did a report on it, and she absolutely loved it. So that says a lot for me.
She's amazing.
Yeah, what I've read of her so far, I absolutely love her work and would love to have her on the podcast at some point.
She's fantastic.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's always helpful to understand someone's story because our experiences often shape the way we see both the church and the world around us.
Yep.
And that leads really really well into my first question. When you think about the relationship between disability and the church today, what do you think we're getting right, and where do you think we still have the most room to grow?
I think churches are really starting to understand that it is imperative that we have inclusive spaces, that our churches are not getting fuller on their own. The pews aren't going to fill themselves. And so we're at a point where churches do need to start paying attention to what we're doing and how we're including people and who might want to be there, and making our spaces more accessible. And on the end of, so I think that we're starting. I think that the thing that we're doing well is we're starting the conversations, but I feel like they're still in their infancy in a lot of ways. A lot of the conversations are still only around, well, we can't afford to put in a ramp or things like that, and not addressing all of the facets of what it really means to be an inclusive congregation. And it goes beyond physical accessibility. A lot of it can be attitudinal, things like that. So I think a lot of churches are getting started in this. But where we really need to go from there is, I think that our churches, so I don't know if you've heard or if you know about the Title III exemption from the Americans with Disabilities Act. Mm-hmm. And it's the exemption that allows churches to basically say, we don't have to do any of that, and not be accessible at all, not do any of that work. And the Title III was fought for by churches. And most of it was on the grounds of, we don't want to have to welcome in people that we don't like. So a good chunk of the argument, that some of it had to be said in their inside voices, they couldn't say it out loud, but there's a lot of documentation that shows that evangelical Christians were not interested in having anything to do with the ADA, because it would mean they would have to open up their pews to queer folks, to alcoholics, to drug addicts, to anybody that they don't want to have in their churches. And so I think that the biggest thing that is holding the church back from true inclusivity is that we are still allowing ourselves to benefit from something that is rooted in homophobia, in ableism, in classism. I mean, this thing is, we're benefiting from it. And unless our churches are making the effort to go and become ADA compliant and then go a little beyond, there's no way that that we're truly having the abundant welcome that Jesus would ask us to have.
Right on. I think that's pretty important. What gets me is why we would take the time to exclude people from the church that we're called to reach. We're called to welcome. We're not called to reach. This sounds horrible, but we're not called to reach the billionaires.
No.
We're called to reach the poor, the marginalized, the outcasts, the people that don't have anywhere else to go. That's who we're supposed to be.
Right. The billionaires could benefit from it, for sure. Maybe they should do a quick read through. I don't know. But it's wild. We have example after example in the actions of Jesus himself that show how we should be treating people that that we are actively keeping out of our pews on purpose. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it doesn't line up very well.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very Jesus-y to me, to quote Mark Sandlin.
Yeah.
I love Mark. I had him on the podcast earlier this year, and he was awesome. Or actually, it might have been last year, but they all run together at this point. Sometimes we assume we're doing well because we've made a few improvements, but accessibility is so much bigger than what people can immediately see.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me to something I hear a lot. Many churches think accessibility begins and ends with a wheelchair ramp. What are some aspects of accessibility that people often overlook?
Ooh, I think that before you even do any structural change to your church, you got to talk to people about disability. There are some major assumptions about disability that, and this now here I am. I'm going to sound terrible. I almost don't want people coming into your church on the ramp if you're going to get in there with a crappy attitude right off the bat. You know what I mean? And so it's almost like you better, like, if you're not going to do the inner work and start changing the assumptions that you have about disability, the stigma that you may not even know. I mean, I've been doing this work for a long time now, and I still run into my own inner ableism that I'm like, oh, I haven't confronted that issue yet, because it's something, it's the water that we're in, you know, we're all in this. And so, you know, I think that when it comes to our churches, we have to start working on what's going on up here first and what's going on in here. And until we can do that, like absolutely build the ramp, get, you know, have Braille programs, make sure you have some, you know, all of the things so that people can fully engage with your service. There's apps now that people can run through their phone so that it goes straight into their hearing devices. I mean, it's incredible how easy accessibility can be, but that doesn't change the story that you hear over and over and over again from disabled folks that well, that was great until somebody wanted to pray over me because of my disability and, you know, and things. So those are the things where that needs to be worked on. I think that's the biggest issue. And then let's work on getting people in there, because if we all remember correctly, the friends who brought their paralyzed friend to see Jesus, they didn't just like, you know, like they went and they lowered him through the roof. So like, let's work on the accessibility once we figure out how we're going to be kind to people once they're in our doors. But but also, if somebody wants access to Jesus, don't make them rip off your roof to get it. Like that's my 2 points there.
I like that. That's good. So you said you touched on something that one of my friends here at seminary, she is wheelchair bound, and one of the books that she recommended is called My Body Is Not Your Prayer Request, I think.
Yes. Yeah, and Amy Kenny.
I haven't read it yet, but it's on my massive list of reading to do.
Move it up.
Yeah.
Move it up.
I need to.
It's a good one.
One of the things I think that you said that I think really would help the church is, as far as, yes, we want to be accessible, but you said it starts here and here. And if we don't have the right attitude here and the right heart here for people, it doesn't matter if they can access the church or not, because they're not going to feel like they're part of the church.
Right.
And that is another thing that to me is something that we as a church need to work on, is just being accessible to other people regardless of whether or not they have a disability, and being the church to those people. Instead of expecting them to come to a church, we can bring the church to them.
Sure. And you know what? And it also, like, to get to the point where your church is becoming like physically, you know, the building and everything else is accessible and people are accessible, there's an absolutely free way to do that costs no money. And that means putting people with disabilities in charge, having folks on your leadership teams. If you have a steering committee that is trying to figure out how to make the place more accessible, you better have the person chairing that committee better be disabled in some way. You know, It can't be somebody who's like, oh, we're doing this for you, because that never comes across. People can sniff that out. Like, I'm not going to go somewhere that's just tolerating me and trying to hand me something that they think is good for me. So it's like I said, it costs nothing to have folks with disabilities and with a variety of disabilities in positions where power is handled. I mean, where, you've got somebody who is on the facilities committee. Okay, well, let's have somebody who navigates the world in a wheelchair. Let's have them be on that committee, and they'll be able to point out right away whether your quick fix with some plywood actually works for them to get up the stairs to the pulpit. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Right on. Right. So that reminds me that accessibility isn't just about the buildings. It's about people feeling seen, valued, and able to fully participate.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there's still a lot of assumptions that can get in the way. What are some of the biggest misconceptions you've encountered with disability within Christian communities?
I think a lot of the time, and these are kind of the basics. And so if they're in Christian communities, they're definitely everywhere else. But it's speaking to somebody with a disability as if they are either not even in the room, and so you're talking to whoever is with them, or as though they are not able to comprehend the conversation. And so again, speaking over somebody. And so I think for churches, a lot of training on just time with people with disabilities would help immensely to get past the barriers. I think for a lot of folks, there's a lot of fear of looking ignorant, or like you haven't done your homework, or things like that. So I think a lot of times if we're nice people, we tend to just avoid the things that might make us look less nice because it might be an awkward situation, and that doesn't necessarily work when you're trying to build real, authentic community. And so it's engaging and being okay with the fact that at some point you might say something that's going to put your foot in your mouth. It's, I think that we're, especially in our progressive spaces, we don't want to do that ever. We want to make sure that we're always staying ahead of the progressive curve, so no one can accuse us of having said or done anything that was less than. But in order to learn and to grow and to build community in really earnest ways, you're going to put your foot in your mouth. So interact with folks. The best thing is to ask how people want to be referred to. Ask how people, is this a thing that's helpful when I rush to open the door, but I stand in the way and now you have to figure out how to navigate me and the door? Is this a helpful thing for you? Or what's the best in this situation? As a church, learning to trust that people with disabilities are the experts of their own bodies and letting them lead us in how they best experience the Spirit in church and how they best can get through the doors.
Right on. Thank you for sharing that. I imagine conversations like these aren't just academic, they're deeply personal. I'd love to hear a little more about how this has impacted your own walk with God. Has your faith been shaped or challenged through your experiences with disability?
Yeah, in a couple of different ways. So on my own personal, with my diagnosis with ADHD, it helped me to understand and start seeing God as a God who can't sit still, because so often we get the story that chaos is bad and nothing, and things, and these are. If it's disruptive, then it's not good. God is peaceful and everything. But my own experience with ADHD and everything, if we are created in the image of God, that means there's some part of God that is a little chaotic, that shows up and disrupts in the middle of your well-intentioned church service, things like that. And so it has really helped me to identify, first of all, I fully believe that the Holy Spirit is neurodivergent. 100%, you can't tell me that there's not a touch of ADHD and the tism going on with the Holy Spirit. And so that has kind of reshaped my theology a little bit of how I personally interact when I feel the Holy Spirit. It's supposed to be disruptive and jarring and chaotic and beautiful and creative and fruitful and all of these things that I know that, along with the side of me that can't seem to fold my clothes, is also able to create analogies like that and find ways that, God is like this, and to see things in a way that is very different from a lot of my neurotypical friends and colleagues. So that piece for me has been an amazing thing to explore. And then also, I had an amazing partner who was a disabled man, and he passed away a few years ago, about a year and a half. And the experience of grieving somebody with a disability is so different from the experience that I've had, in grief in other ways. And I really do think that this experience of love and disability and loss and all of that has opened my heart in different ways to how I see and experience God, and how I care, how I, provide pastoral care, moving on from this place. And it has created a depth of understanding that I didn't have before. And so, yeah, I think that may have only made sense up here, but those are some of the more profound ways that disability has affected my faith journey.
Right on. I appreciate your honesty. I can't help but think of Jesus's ministry, where again and again he drew near to people society often overlooked, which raises an important question for churches today. Jesus consistently centered people who had been pushed to the margins. What do you think churches can learn from his example when it comes to creating communities where people with disabilities genuinely belong?
Well, in most of the stories where we notice that Jesus is interacting with folks with disabilities, they have some agency. He's not, unfortunately we don't have more details on the accounts. Some of them, when you read it, it feels like he did just go up and smear some mud on someone's eyes or things like that. But most of the time, when he's interacting with somebody who has a disability, there's some agency. There is some, he's checking in with them, and he's talking to them as though they were people. Shocking, right? But he's like, when I think about the going back to the story of the paralytic who is lowered through the roof, so that he has access to Jesus. Jesus doesn't immediately go and try to cure him. I don't know if you noticed that. That's not the first step. Instead, Jesus notes the faithfulness of the effort that it took to get into the building, and forgives this man of his sins, which we can assume that that's what this person wanted to go speak to Jesus about. Again, we don't have the full story. We don't have the transcript of the conversation, but we can assume that there was some push to want to go in and talk to Jesus. And I think that, and it isn't until Jesus senses that everybody is all the religious folks in the room are like, well, and they start grumbling about what he's doing and saying, and that Jesus is like, well, watch this. And, but I think one of the examples that we really can take from Jesus, especially, in everything, I mean, like, justice work is so layered that what applies to like one issue often applies to them all. Like creating relationship and taking a cue from the people that you are working with, and that has to be actually alongside, not doing something for, but doing something with, but actually allowing the folks that you are ministering to take the lead on things is a very faithful way to stick to what Jesus was doing, because Jesus didn't just go in, he had conversations with the people that he was ministering to on the margins. When we think about the woman at the well and the deep conversation he had with her, where he knew who she was, and there was no shame in that. He saw her and knew who she was. And, and she went then to go tell other people about him, and he trusted her with that good news. He built relationships. He didn't prescribe them. And I think that as churches, we get so excited about writing a policy for how we're going to deal with certain groups of people or situations that may arise. We love our policies and our bylaws, and I love good bylaws. Don't get me wrong. I love a good set of bylaws, but we can get so in the weeds of that kind of stuff that we ignore the relationship building. And that is how you create actual change. That's how you make spaces that are truly inclusive, is by listening to what's needed, because you might come up with something that's not needed and have spent a bunch of money on something that nobody's going to use because you didn't consult a single person with a disability.
Right on. I want to go back to something you said when you were talking about how you think God has a touch of the autism and the ADHD. Do you think he's figured out how to fold a fitted sheet? Because I can't figure that out for the life of me.
I think
I've tried and I can't.
I feel like maybe God created humans to figure that out for them, because I know like two people who can do that, and every time they do, I'm like, witchcraft. It's like this, exactly. Like sorcery. What kind of dark magic is this? It is. I have no idea how people can do that. I've gotten close once. But I didn't stay around for it because I'm like, this is really not worth my time. So I then wadded it up like I usually do and threw it in the cupboard. Yeah.
That's what I did at youth camp. I went to youth camp last month, and as we were getting ready to leave, the boys are packing up all their bedding and stuff. And one kid's just like, how do I fold this fitted sheet? So I took it, turned it inside out, rolled it into a ball, and stuffed it in his bag. I said, there you go, bud.
Yep.
He was like, I could have done that. Then why'd you ask me?
Yeah. I mean, that's real.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I thought I figured it out one time, and then I was like, I couldn't reproduce it. So apparently.
No, I know. That's the same. I'm like, oh, this is how oh, wow. Oh, my life has changed now. And then I could never do it again. And I was like, look, it's not. I have too many other things on the list right now that need to be done to YouTube how to fold a fitted sheet. So
I feel that.
And you know what? I think Jesus loves you even if you don't fold your fitted sheets. I'm pretty sure Jesus is okay with that. Yeah.
I don't think Jesus had fitted sheets.
I hope not. Can you imagine?
They were golden fleece sheets. That's what I'm
Can you imagine how reduced Jesus's capacity for ministry would have been if he'd been expected to fold his fitted sheets? Like the amount of time and energy that sucks away from you. Like we would have had, like we we'll never know, but we may not have had as much like meat to the Gospels as we do.
And then Jesus folded his sheets.
Right. We don't see that in there. And that's there for a reason. Actually, we don't really see a lot of Jesus doing the stuff that we are told that we have to do in order to be respected. And what's the word? It's the word that I hate. You know what? It's fine. But people in society who do things, there's a word for it that's really simple, and it's like out of my brain right now. Productive. There we go.
Productive
Yeah,
members of society.
Jesus. We don't have a lot of examples of him, going and clocking in at the job that he hates, and then going home and washing his dishes, and then checking his credit scores and things like that. Like, Jesus was not a respectable person in society, and so don't and this is all just to reassure you, it's okay not to fold your fitted sheets.
I'm just imagining the Gospels as Jesus having to go clock into a job he hates, sit there for 8 hours and just hate life,
right?
and come home and
walk
wash
out
his dishes.
And just try to find some little spark of life for the things that actually bring him joy and he's passionate about. Yeah.
See, I often wonder if Jesus was a good carpenter, because apparently not if he became a preacher.
Yeah.
And then I have this theory that the reason that Peter denied Jesus is because Jesus healed his mother-in-law, and having been married and divorced, I can totally relate to that feeling.
But
like, Peter's just sitting there, if Jesus was really my friend, he wouldn't have done that.
He wouldn't have,
he wouldn't have done
that. Mother-in-law hate aside, yeah.
And I didn't hate my ex-mother-in-law.
No.
At all. I loved her to death. It just, things didn't work out with her daughter, and that's what happens.
And that's how it goes, right?
Yeah. So now that we've gotten a little bit sidetracked.
Perfect. That was the Holy Spirit at work.
Oh yeah, definitely need some comedy in the show. I appreciate that, because just trying to figure out how to fold a fitted sheet sometimes is too much.
It is. It's too much.
Maybe that's something we could teach at church.
Somebody that knows workshop. Yeah.
All right.
Who is it? Yeah. Who discovered among, as we do a skill share or something like that. Who here can actually fold a fitted sheet? We're spending an hour on this.
Oh, goodness. So what's one practical step that a church could take this week to become more accessible and more welcoming to people with disabilities?
So, I always have to plug the accessibility audit that is part of the United Church of Christ Disabilities Ministries Accessible to All program, because it is, even if you don't go follow through with the whole program and have your church deemed accessible to all, which is basically our way of saying that you've gotten as close as you can to ADA compliant as a church. Good job. What it does is it's got multiple questions in so many different areas that that cause you to really question what your church is doing about providing spaces in church for families who have kids with multiple needs to, move around, make noise, which doesn't even mean that it's a child with a disability either. Like, kids kind of do need to move around and make noise, but do you have spaces that are sensory friendly? Do you have your ushers been trained in how to welcome people? Things like that. And so with this one, it's more of it's an audit. You're going through and it's a checklist of all the things that your church does or does not do well. And, and it does get into the nitty gritty of, do you have push bars on your doors? Do you have elevators? Do you have, what kind of water fountains do you have? Those kind of things. But it's a really good, quick way where in an afternoon, a couple people could go through the church and figure out these are really the areas that we excel in, because I expect that, as with most churches, there are places where we excel and we are so welcoming in. And so it can be very affirming in that way of, we're already doing this because so-and-so last year requested large print bulletins, and now we just do them all large print instead of having only 5 copies on hand, or, things like that. So a lot of times there are things that we're already doing. So it's very affirming to say, we're already on this path. And then it gives you an idea of, other things you can do. Some stuff it's free. I mean, some stuff it like takes a couple of hours of conversation with people or things like that. So I recommend if you go to uccdm.org and look for the A2A tab, there's an audit there, and it's just so helpful. And that is one thing that churches can do right now that will just give you an idea, help you take the temperature of how accessible your church really is.
Right on. That's awesome. If you'll do me a favor and send me that website,
Yeah.
I'll include it in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
And that sounds like a fantastic starting point. But hopefully churches don't just stop there, because inclusion isn't about attendance. It's about participation and leadership as well.
Exactly.
And how can churches move beyond simply welcoming people with disabilities to empowering them as leaders, teachers, volunteers, and ministers within the life of the congregation?
I invite everyone who's part of a church to think of any of your clergy in the last, 20, 30 years, however long you've been part of that church. I mean, if it's 5 years, think back to the last 5 years. But how many of the clergy called to serve your church have been disabled and have had a visible disability or a disability that's invisible, but they talk about and they're out about and open about? Because a lot of times we don't talk about those things because it can get in our way of being called into churches. And so I think asking, have you ever called a disabled pastor? Would you? What would make you feel like maybe you couldn't? I think that those are really important questions to ask, because getting folks with disabilities in positions of leadership is really important. But it's also incredibly important to call and affirm that people with disabilities are called into ministry and have spiritual gifts, and God has called them as they are, exactly as they are, to lead churches. And because there is a certain wisdom that shows up in disability, that in not calling folks with disabilities, you're completely cutting out that whole perspective. And the reality is there are probably more people in the pews with disabilities than they've ever let on, because churches have traditionally and historically been so hard on people with disabilities that they may hide them, no matter how uncomfortable that is, for that hour and a half every Sunday, and never let folks in on that. So it's got to come from the top. You've got to have people, you have to be willing and say, yeah, we will have people with disabilities in our pulpit. We'll make sure that if our pastor has to be gone for a couple of Sundays or anything like that, then our pulpit supply, we're looking for people with disabilities, and making our pulpits more equitable, because the reality is there are a lot more people with disabilities around than anybody even considers. And so it's important and empowering and affirming to see and hear and experience and have the feeling of having somebody who's like me in the pulpit.
Yeah. And that's something that Sarah Lund touched on in Blessed Minds. She has a whole chapter that's just about neurodivergent pastors. And I thought that was a really cool section, because that kind of speaks to my journey as well.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really cool to see that not only are there pastors out there doing it, but they're thriving when they have the right accommodations and can do, they do an amazing job at what they do. And like you said earlier, they are absolutely called by God just as they are. Yeah. And their journey speaks to other people that have been through a similar journey or similar process and have similar disabilities. So I thought that was a really cool section of her book. So we're going to start wrapping up the conversation here. I've got one more question, and then I've got a lightning round for you that I've started doing on my last episode. So,
okay.
All right. So we'll get the last question in here. If you could change one thing about how the broader church understands disability, what would it be? And why do you think making that shift would have such a lasting impact?
I think it would definitely be that disability is not a problem to be solved. Disability shows us another facet of the face of God. We understand God better when we understand that people are created in multiple ways, and if the church could get around the idea that disability doesn't need to be cured or fixed or hidden away, but can be incorporated into the life of the church as is, then our churches will be more vibrant, diverse, beautiful spaces.
Right on. I like that. All right. So you ready for the lightning round?
Let's go.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. Yeah. Early bird or night owl?
Neither. I just
Really?
want to sleep all the time.
You know what? That's fair. Usually when I get a message from you, though, it's like at 11 o'clock at night. So
Right.
I would have assumed night owl.
Night owl, but under duress. I have teenagers, so they're making noise until 2 a.m. So I'm awake as long as the house is awake. You know, if I could be in bed all the time.
I feel you. I'm with you on that. What's one book other than the Bible that has had a significant impact on your life?
You know what? We're going to bring it right back around to the one that you mentioned earlier. My Body Is Not a Prayer Request.
Okay.
After reading that one, I felt invigorated and ready to maybe to punch some people, but also to do some stuff. You know, we're just going to say we're going to leave it at to do some stuff in the church. Leave the violence outside.
Sounds good. If you could have dinner with any biblical figure besides Jesus, who would it be and why?
Ooh, Woman at the Well. I love her and her 5 husbands that are not the man that she's living with right now. Like, get it, girl. And also I feel like she probably could use, there's a lot of heartache involved in having that much change. So transition and upheaval in your life. And I'd love to hear her story.
Right on. That story always gives me hope because it made me realize that the disciples aren't very bright. Because they come back and
do this.
Yeah. If they can do it, I can do it.
We're called whether or not we realize that we're equipped for it. You know, like we can do this. It may take a couple of tries. In Peter's case, however many tries, I feel like he's the king of false starts.
Peter's usually the one disciple that I always get when somebody's like, if you were a disciple, you'd be Peter. Like, why? Because you're quick at the mouth and you don't always catch yourself. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
most likely to slice somebody's ear off verbally. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Guilty as charged.
What's your favorite worship song or hymn?
Here I Am, Lord. Always has been.
I love that song. I actually I preached my first sermon with that as kind of like the background thought, because I preached on that passage, Isaiah 6 and Isaiah 55, and tied it in with Mary's call about how God always, God doesn't always give us the details, but also he doesn't expect us to have it all figured out.
Right.
God wants us to trust him.
We show up.
Yeah. God's not looking for somebody that's got everything figured out. He's looking for somebody that
here I am, Lord. Not here I am, Lord, and I've got the spreadsheets. It's simply here I am, Lord.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So we did favorite worship song. One piece of advice you would give to your younger self.
It's okay that it takes time. Late blooming is actually a beautiful thing, and don't be so hard on yourself.
Amen. I guess I needed that one. If every pastor listening today remembered only one sentence from this conversation, what would you want that sentence to be?
Oh gosh, disability is a beautiful part of God's creation.
Word. I like that. And finally, what's something about you that most people would be surprised to learn?
I did roller derby on and off for about 18 years.
Right on.
I mean, I did make the comment about wanting to punch people, so maybe it's not that surprising, but
Right on. Well, Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an incredible conversation, and I know it's going to encourage and challenge a lot of people. I appreciate your willingness to share your story and your wisdom. And to everybody listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Pastor in Training podcast. If today's conversation encouraged you, consider sharing it with a friend, your pastor, or church leadership team. Conversations like these help us become more faithful reflections of Christ's love. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. And until next time, keep asking good questions, keep seeking truth, and keep becoming the people that God is calling us to be. Let's go out and leave the world better than we found it. Grace and peace. Jeff out.